It's hard to tell your wife like, hey, we got to take some money out of our personal account to cover the business expense. And she's like, I thought we were good. I was like, not this month.
Welcome back to another episode of the Skid Steer Nation podcast. My name is Ryan, and I am your host. And this episode is brought to you by none other than Skid Steer Nation. With spring fast approaching, that means you're going to have tore up driveways, roads, debris, trees down, whatever situations you run across. If you need attachments for that work, visit skidsteernation.com. We are an online supplier of American-made manufactured attachments. And these manufacturers, we have interviewed them, we have vetted them, we make sure that their quality meet your expectations. And these guys take a lot of pride in the products they produce. So jump on over to skidsteernation.com and check out our available line of attachments. All right, today's episode, we have actually a friend of mine. His name is Mason Rickner. He's based out in Chandler, Oklahoma. He and his father own a company called K&M Excavation and Septic. And I am excited to have this conversation. He has seen major growth over the last few years. And like any other business, that growth just presents new problems. So we're going to dig into those today, find out what solutions he came up along the way and where he's heading into the future. Mason, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking time out of a busy Monday. You said you had
yes, sir.
2 septic systems going in today.
Yep. We're hopefully rolling off on a good foot. We've got, like I said, 15 going in this month. So the two today, they have to start off being rough. So it's always Monday before 10 o'clock when you get all your problems. So
I can attest to that. My Monday morning has been a little choppy as well. So it's you spend Sunday night planning out your week. You hit the ground running, and then you just get diverted with emails and phone calls.
The plans never seem to stick to it. So
yeah, I think Mike Tyson always said it best. Everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the mouth.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. So, you guys have seen some crazy growth. When did you and your dad exactly start K&M?
We started in 2019, February 2019. So
were you doing it full time at that point, or was it a side project?
Side project.
So
we just started with the dump trailer. We didn't even have a skid steer. We were renting for a while. And I had no idea what I was. I've never been around the industry at all. Just, one of those things you see it on TikTok. Everybody's trying to get a side hustle, and we actually took the bait and bought the dump trailer and took off from there.
So at the beginning, you were just hauling material for other contractors, customers, or what was your?
Yeah, we had a neighbor that did cabinets, and he had a lot of them he was tearing out. So we started doing the tear outs with him, and found out that gravel was paying a lot more than the cabinets were, and I didn't have to go load the trailer myself. So got into the gravel and kind of went away from there.
And then what was the progression from hauling gravel to spreading and leveling and making roads?
We bought our first skid steer probably 3 months after the dump trailer. It's just a little Kubota 65. We kept it probably 6 months. Did driveways. We had a do-more grader. Probably did 3 or 4 driveways a month, and just 5-ton loads of gravel. And at some point, we just got to the point where every time somebody called for something, it was like, okay, this makes a little bit more money. Let's start doing this. So we got into the brush clearing, and then we were like, well, we need a bigger skid steer. So, you get into a bigger skid steer, and we chased the money.
Yeah. And how did that work for you? Like chasing the money?
It's worked pretty good. It's definitely got us in, we got into the mulching, because some guy, I didn't know how much to charge on mulching. I knew it was going to be like $1,000 a day to rent a mulcher from Cat. And he asked if we could do it. And I was like, man, I'll do it for $2,000 a day. And he was like, oh yeah, let's go. So at that point, that was like, let's sell the 65. Let's get a bigger skid steer, and let's get a mulcher. Because if he's going to say yes to 2,000, like, I think I can make it work. So
I can make it work. And you have enough property out in Oklahoma area that that land clearing wasn't saturated, there was enough customers in your market?
Oh yeah. There's guys everywhere now, and it's kind of funny because there's so many of them that have jumped off and done it, but there's so few that do quality work, that talk to their clients, and actually, are running a business. There's a lot of guys that have skid steers with mulchers, but there's not a lot of guys that have taken that next step to really do the full project or even know what they're doing. I know there's one company that we follow around that they just drive over it like a brush hog. They don't back drag or anything, and I don't know. They haven't figured it out yet because we keep we followed them for like 6 months, just doing their fine finish work for mulching.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy. So when did you make the jump from part-time to full-time?
I was, as soon as, we saw the work, after I got kind of the policy I go by is like, if I can replace what I'm doing, I'm going to jump into it. We were making pretty good money. But this last year is probably when we really took it to kind of a full-time thing. The first year we didn't make any money, and really the second year we didn't make any money. And until we got kind of our overhead and finally started to get our profit and loss. And, that's when once we got all of it squared away, I was like, oh, I actually am making money. Okay. Now I can pay myself. And once we got the procedures in, that's when I took it. Before that, we were just kind of doing jobs and how much is in the account. Okay, we can buy this. But, until you get that organization and those processes in place, that's when we finally did it. When we got everything squared away, organized. And
was there a moment that the pain of not knowing that data forced you to dig into it?
Yeah. Probably the worst feeling I'd had. We just bought we bought a 309 excavator. We paid like $130,000 for it. And I got the first payment. I thought I had $10,000 in the bank. It just been a busy month. We've been doing jobs all over the place, took delivery, was still busy all the month. Thought I had $10,000 in the bank, and the first payment pulls, and we were down to like $1,500. I had $2,000 in the bank. And so literally within that day, I was like, I got to start over. So we turned around, we ended up selling that 309 for 150. So we made 20 grand. And I was like, I am not dropping below 30,000 at emergency account. Like we immediately went to QuickBooks. We got everything organized because I was like, I can't run out of money like that again. It was
how painful did that experience feel in the moment? Like having to go backwards.
Oh, it's a gut check. Yeah. Cause you think that you're invincible until the bank account runs dry, for sure. But yeah, and it's hard to tell your wife like, hey, we got to take some money out of our personal account to cover the business expense. And she's like, I thought we were good. And I was like, not this month.
Not this month. So, and then what did you see as a benefit? Like, do you have a better line of sight on all your projects, your incoming expenses, your outgoing cash? Are you planning more strategically?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is the things that don't make money, we've cut off. Like gravel, we bought that dump truck, just a single axle, and we've cut off all gravel because it's gotten to a point where I can call the quarry and I can deliver for the same price subcontracting as the guys that are running dump trucks. And we've cut off just small jobs, little here or there, anything under basically $1,500 we don't mess with, because it's just at this point our costs are so much that it's not worth leaving the house. But I wouldn't have known, that cost. We were trying to fit a day in where we do maybe a $400 job, and I didn't realize that I was spending $400 on diesel and just my overhead for that day. So
it's so easy to get caught up in the work.
Yeah.
You just assume if I'm working hard, I'm making money.
Right.
When in reality, if you don't know what your expenses are, you don't know if you're making money or not.
Oh yeah. Yeah, sure.
So that's awesome. And since you've taken that step back to go in and like really get organized on the back end of your business, what have you seen for growth in your company now?
Just from January to now, we've done we've profited over 30,000. And just that's just from processes. So everything that we've done, we're paying a lot of money into inputs on software and stuff like that. But really where it's counting is these jobs, I'm not fly by night giving quotes out. Every quote that we've done in January, February, December, every quote that we've done, I know exactly how much that's going to cost, exactly how much time it's going to take. The guesswork's gone. So we're 10 times more efficient. I've got a guy that's working for me that he's really taken off, and having those processes in place, he doesn't have to guess. So he's not just out on the skid steer doing random things all day. He's got a step-by-step process of what he has to accomplish to make money and to make his paycheck. So he follows it pretty close.
That's fantastic. So I always think, I can talk to so many contractors, and I even live this myself with businesses that I've owned in the past. You fall into that trap so easy where you just go hustle, 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 bring money in, and you have no idea where it's going. And then you get kicked in the nuts, like we talked about, and you got to stop. And you feel like you're going backwards. You're like, oh,
right.
And then you got all these months of expenses or months of estimates, and you've got to go back through and recalculate this stuff. And then you can finally get line of sight. And then the clarity you have moving forward, like the amount of hours you save a week, because like you said, your cost, your expenses, exactly where you're going to be at on every job. That little bit of planning for your employee and that structure, that process for him, he's more efficient with his time. And you're like, and the first thing you think of, I did anyway, was, my God, I should have done this 6 months ago, a year ago.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's so important to treat it like a business. So yeah. So you said you had 15 septic tanks on the books this month. So I remember you and I met, I think we met end of 2020, beginning of 2021, somewhere in that time frame.
COVID.
Yeah. And you were just doing the gravel driveways, and you were doing some gravel hauling in that. And I remember when you were talking about buying that 309, because you were between that and a bigger trailer, a dump truck. And I was like, Mason, do not buy a dump truck.
Yeah, that was good advice.
And we spent like an hour discussing the pros and cons of owning a dump truck. If you're not in the trucking business, like if you have 15 of them, that's different, but you wanted one. And I'm like, it's not the right direction for you. And you doubled down on septic tanks, and you really made septics like your core service. And, when I saw that you were doing 15 this month, I'm like, this is the fruits of the labor. Like, cut out the noise, focus on what you're going to do, give it a little bit of time. And now you're seeing the benefits of that focus.
Yeah. And what we found is you and me have talked about the niche, finding your niche and sticking with it. And what we've kind of found is, I've got the mulcher, but I have a diamond mulcher. I don't have anything crazy, but it leaves a great finish and does great. And we have the mulching available, but we do site prep. So our niche right now for these contractors is, I can come in, I can clear your trees, I can get your pad ready, I can do your water lines, your footings, and I can put your septic system in and do final grade. Right there, that is our bread and butter. We don't do mulching over 20 acres. We've partnered with some guys that if we get the job comes in, we partner with them and they can take care of it. We don't do crazy big mulching jobs. We don't do crazy big dirt work projects. We just do site prep. And once we figured out we're really good at site prep, man, it's so much easier, because you know what you're doing every day. It's not like, somebody calls and they need some crazy big pond dug. I'm not your guy for ponds, but if you need to get a house ready to go, or drainage, something like that, I'm there. So
you're the guy. So when you built that package for contractors, home builders, and said, hey, we'll be your start to finish site prep source, from clearing the property to pad preparation, rough grading, final grading, any other utilities in the mix, were you offering that because you wanted all the work, or did you actually stop and look and say, hey, how can I make their life easier so that I actually end up getting more work?
Well, and what I've done to answer that, what I've done is every time I drive by a home builder's site, I call the number on the sign and I say, hey, what do you need? I'm a contractor. We do site prep. We do septics. What do you need on your job? And, most of the time they're like, well, if I could find an electrician, that'd be great. But it's like, well, we do this. So just listening to what they have to say of hey, I've got pad that needs done. I've got final grade. I've got trash on site that I need picked up when you do the septic. Just listening to what they need and then answering, going by need. If they need it, then we're going to do it. So,
yeah, and I think to break that down, like one, that's market research. What does the market need in your area? And you don't know that if you don't talk to your customers,
right,
or your potential customers. So you're doing that very well. And then two, it's business is all about minimizing friction. So that home builder, his goal isn't to get the yard graded, it's to get the house finished to be sold, right? And he wants his least amount of friction from breaking ground to selling, so it's quick, efficient, and profitable for him.
Mm-hmm.
So you as a contractor, that's your opportunity to go, hey, you're working with 6 companies, one guy doing the grading, one guy doing the septic, one guy doing the utilities, one guy doing the whole, like, let me remove all of that friction for you and be your single source, and you can just take it off your plate. They'll pay more money for that freedom and that time than they will have trying to schedule 6 contractors per project.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So we always talk about it as a Christmas present. This is the best way I found to describe this, but like what you offer, your service, it's the same as the guy down the street. Do you wrap it in brown paper so it looks boring and uneventful and forgetful? Or do you wrap it in the bright, shiny tinfoil style snowflake? Right. So when they see it, everyone's like, ooh, look, a present. Like, you're not changing the services you do. You're changing the way you present it to your customer, and just change the outside offer so it looks more appealing, less friction, easier for them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that definitely helps with, we started doing the hats, the t-shirts and everything, and all the logo, the signs at the road and everything. And that's really helped them, that aspect of the contractor. They now have somebody that's there that looks professional, like they're supposed to be there. It's not a guy coming up in a beat up old pickup with a ragged out skid steer. They're, we're coming in, we're being professional, we're being polite. We pick up all our trash. We leave it better than we found it. And, one of the things that I've gotten more work off of the name on my jacket, having the phone number back there, and some guy pulling up and being like, who's doing your dirt work, or who is, just from the subdivision work. Another contractor drives by, they see our sign at the road, then they see our truck with the load, then they see the skid steer with the load, then they see our jackets, and they're like, man. So we've got a lot of work off of that.
You've done a very good job branding your business. And it's so key, because people need so many different touch points with your business before they're comfortable doing business with you. And by you having the signs at the jobs that you're doing, your trucks, your clothing, your website, your social media page, like, you're touching these people in so many areas that it gets to the point they're like, God, this guy's everywhere. This is who I need to do my work. And they don't even know the quality of your work. They just know they've seen you everywhere, and you can't be everywhere if you don't do a good job. Yeah.
We get that all the time, that people think that we're a lot bigger than we are. So it's worked pretty good.
Yeah. Branding's a huge thing. I think anyone starting up, and you and I had these conversations 2 years ago, developing your brand, your commitment to your customers, as far as answering the phones and your communication and being professional in appearance and conversation. If you can just do those little things, it's so hard not to be successful, because so many guys don't do it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in a unique state, in my opinion. So I talk to a lot of contractors that do septic systems, and it's like, here in Illinois, it's, hey, here's a little course, take it. If you pass it, you can inspect, you can install, you can basically do everything except for the sewer lines. Oklahoma is not like that.
No.
I mean, you guys had quite the process. I mean, you had me doing research, because I couldn't believe how hard it is. Walk through a little bit, just the high level points of like what it takes to be able to install a septic system in Oklahoma.
Yeah, so it's a really backward system. You have to install 5 systems of each type, and then each of those systems has to be inspected by the inspector, jointly inspected. And then to get your license, you actually have to have 2 more after you pass the test on your own that are still inspected before you can get your license for that individual system. So that's hard when you're a new installer because you're like, oh, how am I going to get 5 installs? So you're really worried about it because you only have a year to do it. And you're like, I haven't even done one, and now I've got to do basically 7 installs of each system, which we ended up doing. But it was just, and then you got to get the homeowner to trust you. Like, no, I'm not licensed, but I'm under an inspector. He has to check off everything I do. So it's a not the best way to do it, but it's definitely it's definitely makes you learn your stuff.
Yeah, I would say
But
that you guys are extremely proficient in the different systems because of the
yeah, by
experience
the
you've
time you've had that inspector breathing down your neck, and we've had to rip out systems completely and do it differently just because we thought it was one way, and the pipe was a different number than it was supposed to be, and just learning all that. You don't get pipe from Home Depot. Figure that out real quick. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. So, like, what's your projections this year? Like, I mean, you're so focused on the site prep and the septic systems. Did you say that's 90% of your work? Those things that fall in those 2 realms.
We want to be 100% septics. We want to get into the pumping. We want to get into the maintenance. But there's always that, we're not there yet. We're not official with, or we're not getting enough work to just go ahead and leave everything out. So that's, with the new installs, they don't need to be pumped. They don't need to be inspected. So we haven't broke into to that market as much. So that's, to kind of recession proof ourselves. We're trying to push into that market, and there's really not a lot of guys that do it around here. There's only 2 or 3, and I've tried to buy all their businesses, but we haven't got that yet. So I don't know.
How easy is it for you to present a $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 septic system to a customer and then walk them through the process of what it looks like and make them comfortable investing that much money?
It's really difficult around here because 2 or 3 years ago, septic systems were $4,500 to $6,000, and everything's blown up in price, and our average system is between 7,000 to 10,000. So it's still a lot less than northern states and stuff like that, but we are always the highest bidder. I mean, no matter what, we are the highest bidder. And especially with contractors, they're like, well, why am I paying this? Well, I might have a set rate with my contractor that is, I know it's their minimum cost that they want to spend on the system. But then I'll go to the homeowner and I'll be like, I can put this system in for their price, but here's the things that you're not going to get. And whether that be, extra cleanouts down here, whether it be a filter on the outlet side of it, whether it be, instead of doing Oklahoma, we're not required to do a distribution system. So we don't have to have a distribution box. We don't have to have that. We just have tees. So I'm like, I like this a lot better. I'm not required to do it, but for this amount of money, we'll do a better system. Either way, it's going to work. But 9 times out of 10, they're like, go ahead and get it done. I don't want to ever deal with this again. So, especially with something like that, you tell them like, this is going to work, but we can make it better.
Yeah.
So especially when they see us on Facebook posting, here's the pictures of this and this and this, they're like, I want that. It's like, well, this comes at a cost of this.
Yep.
So it's gotten easier, and definitely the way we talked about a while back with quoting, this is the price. I'm not going to, because we have contractors they'll say the system's $4,500. Well, then they're like, oh, we hit rock. Well, we did this, and they start tacking on at the end. And I tell them, it doesn't matter if I hit rock or a big plate of steel or the bottom of this, whatever we run into, your price is $7,000. And then their quote, it's stacked with, I probably have 5 pages on quote of just what we're going to do.
And laying out and describing what it is that you do.
They're like, man, we use Jobber now for our quotes. So I can add pictures into it. This is what it's going to look like. This is every stage is on there. So the quote's a big deal. So
it's a huge deal. And it's the one thing that I think it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Like we forget because we do the work every day, that the people we're talking to have no idea what we do. They just want the finished product. So we have to do a little bit of education and teach them what we're doing so they're comfortable with our process and our price.
Yeah, that was with the septic systems, because nobody knows what you're talking about when you're like, okay, you got some guy that's never been around it. You're like, yeah, I'm going to use schedule 40 over here, and then I'm going to use schedule 35 down below. And he's like, I don't really know what that is. But then, we have a comparison that we do where we run over different pipe with our skid steer, and we're like, this is how strong our pipe is compared to what you could be using. We have those pictures and those videos right in our quote. So when they go down through there, they're like, oh yeah. So, somebody that's not in the industry, because we can use industry jargon all day long, but when they're reading it, they have no idea what they're talking about. So we break it down real simple.
Yeah.
So that, I in one of your podcasts, you talked about I can't remember, he said to let it read it, but if your wife or something doesn't understand it, then I'm going to rewrite it. So we started doing that. I was like, honey, do you understand this quote? And she's like, oh yeah.
It's so true though. Like your wife knows what you do, but she doesn't know the details of what you do. So if you start writing quotes, use her as a reference. So, hey, will my customer understand this or not? I
judge it. If I can sell to my wife, then I can sell to anybody. So she's the most critical person. So she's a good tester.
That's fantastic, man. That's fantastic. So I remember it was like 6 months ago or so, you reached out and we talked for a little while. You were struggling with like the hiring and retaining of employees.
Yeah.
What was your where were you at when you called me? Like, what was not working for you? Let's just kind of get a little.
It's still a struggle, and we're still trying to figure it out. It's a weird situation because I've definitely figured out I can make more money if I'm sitting here doing everything else. I'm a better salesman than I am an operator. So we hired a guy, and he's a good worker. He does really good. And but the issue that I have is I have an expectation that is my expectation, and oftentimes he doesn't meet that expectation. And I don't really think anybody really will, because you're self-critical. But we talked about trying to sit down with him, do those morning meetings, just clarifying everything. We started doing the job forms, like step by step. Just yesterday, he took back a D5 dozer to CAT and didn't fill it back up. So there's $650 of diesel fuel that, I know that's how you're supposed to do it, but he didn't know. So we hired a CDL driver probably 3 months ago, and he showed up 2 days and then disappeared. So we've struggled with it, with finding guys, but we're just now getting to where the guy that I'm talking about that left the dozer, he's gotten to where he can run a machinery. So we're trying to mold him into the person, because I'm used to growing up with my dad on the farm. You get screamed and yelled at, you just need to figure it out. There's tough love, and he's not like that. He's like, I don't know, man.
That's the difference between family and employees right there.
Yeah. So it's definitely learning his kind of, my wife kind of coached me. She was like, you got to learn their love language, kind of their learning language, kind of the same way in marriage therapy, how they learn.
I learned a long time ago. I remember reading a book. It was probably, I'm going to date myself here. It was probably 2004, 2005.
Right.
And I can't remember the name of the book. Otherwise I'd share it. I'll try to look for it and put it in the show notes when we post this. But it basically talks about there's 4 types of personalities, and you cannot communicate to them the same way, and nor can you expect the same results if you do, and nor can you expect them to communicate your way. So like as a leader, it is your job to learn what type of person you have so you can communicate effectively with them. And the reason I remember this book so vividly is because I had a business partner, and he was like the alpha type A, it's my way, we're only doing my ideas. And this book had a whole chapter about this type of person. And it took me like 30 days of tinkering with some different ways of communicating with him until I got to the point where I could actually get him to do my ideas. But it was just me framing them in questions so that he came to the conclusion in his own mind.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do it. I'm like, awesome. But if I would have came in and said, hey, we're going to do this way, he would have told me no, just for principle.
Right. Yeah.
We never would have got anywhere. So like, that's the reason I remember that book so vividly, is because it made such a drastic impact in my life, just in one of the 4 segments. And like, because I didn't work with the other 3, I couldn't tell you what they were. But I remember there was 4 personality types, and each person needed to be communicated to differently.
Mhm.
And if you can learn that, like your wife calls them love languages, because that's what they're taught in relationship classes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It's like personality types, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you can get really farther with those people. I think the other thing that we've been really focused on with some of the companies we're working with now is that are in your stage where trying to hire and grow is like, hey, let's take another step back the same way you did with your books in the back end.
Yeah.
All right, I do a great job branding our company. Do I do a really good job branding our culture? Hell, do I even have my culture defined? Are our values and our mission statement, is all of that defined? And are we presenting that in a way that like-minded people like me can see it, feel it, watch a video on it?
Right.
Is it presented in how we market our business? And then once you get that aspect finished, then you can actually change the questions in your interview process to include value-based questions that line up with your company values. Because you can get the best operator in the world, but if he wears 10-year-old Carhartt pants every day because that's his favorite pair of pants, and you want him to look professional and clean,
Yeah.
you two are going to butt heads, right? It's just not being presentable and professional isn't in his value base.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then you're going to be mad. Like, this guy just looks terrible. I'm like, well, but he looked terrible when you hired him. Like,
Yeah.
wasn't a priority
Yeah.
to him then. It's not going to be a priority to him now. So
Right.
finding these value-based questions, which, explain to me a time that you had to get dressed up and how it made you feel. And off the top of my cuff, I need time to lay it out, but like mixing those into past job experience, operator experience, and all that, because then you're better off not hiring anybody and spending the time and the energy and the effort training them for 3 weeks than you are figuring out how to do it yourself, because you're more efficient that way until you find the right fit culturally with your values.
Right. Yeah.
So that would be my recommendation for you if we were talking about what you need to do for hiring, is like take a step back and look at your culture and your brand and your mission statement and how you clearly defining it and showing it. I know I keep using him as an example, but Tyler in Idaho, he went from 4 to 16 employees, I think, 14, 15, 16 employees. He never once did a job post.
Really?
No, his team was so bought in on what he was doing that when they were out talking to other people in the industry, I always say there's always one really good employee on every crew.
Yeah.
And if they're not being treated really well, they'll go look somewhere else to work.
Oh, yeah.
So Tyler became the place where everybody came to look to, hey, I want to work with you. I want to work in this scenario.
Right.
I want to work with this communication. I want to work with these values. So yeah, he was able to grow his business.
Yeah. Our culture, man, and it's hard with my dad and me, because I'm ready to go, take the risk. Let's go. Let's stay up all night. Let's finish this so we don't have to work tomorrow. And my dad's very conservative. He's very cautious, and which he's not as involved with everything as I'd like him to be, but he definitely has that kind of overlooking mindset of like, hey, 2008, I know how that is. And I'm like, I don't even know. I just remember playing basketball in junior high in 2008. I wasn't worried about all that. So I don't have that that worry, or and he doesn't know the social media. So he's like, why are we buying a $1,500 drone? It's like, okay, well, why are we buying t-shirts? Why are we buying, so his whole thing. And then we got new guys that are coming in. They're a whole different generation than I am. That's not that long ago. And these high school kids that are like, can we work till like 3? It's like, no, we can't, we can't work till 3. That's, we don't show up at 9 and leave at 3. So but the culture, man, I've tried to do it, and I definitely need to work on it, because it's hard.
So I would sit down. If I was you, I would sit down and I would start with you personally, and maybe mix in a little bit of your dad too. But like, you need to define your personal values, because if your values don't align with your business values, your business is unsuccessful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once you define your personal values, then you can start creating like, what are the values of this company? Like, what do we stand for? Who are we? What's important to us? Customers, community, employees. And then you can go from there. You take those values, you kind of create a mission statement of who you are, what you do, why you do it. And the why is very important. And then you just start mixing that into your messages, into your social media posts, into your branding.
Right. Yeah.
And people just start noticing it.
Yeah. We've definitely, I've been trying to stress, it's hard to stress to a new guy. We're trying to do things that everybody else does. There's other guys that do septics. There's other guys that do mulching, but we're trying to do those simple things, those ordinary things extraordinarily. So we want to do it above and beyond what somebody else is going to do.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell them like what that is, what the extraordinary is when they don't know what I'm thinking. So
right. I think a good example for you to use for that I hate saying this even, is McDonald's.
Yeah.
I mean, every fast food restaurant pops up thinking they're going to take a piece of the pie from McDonald's, and they always end up falling on their rear.
Yeah.
If you take a look at McDonald's, they do three things, man. They do three things. They're fast, because that's why we go there. It's convenience and speed. Even like, I think the fries are terrible, but they're the same level of terrible every time I go there. It's consistent.
Yeah.
It's consistent. And they're really good about their systems, processes, and training. I mean, if you look at like the fry line, I think like they've got timers built in for like that'll automatically pull the fries out because they only want them to cook for X amount of seconds. And the soda machine, they don't push the soda anymore. It's a button, and the thing predetermines how much. So like those are all systems and processes. And then the training for each little area. And it's in the franchise model of training is to make the training so simple that the least experienced person can do the task. Like at what level of experience?
Yeah.
But I mean, you can take those same principles into any business. Like, hey, we need to be consistent. We need to be this, or like, what are our values? And then those are what we focus on. Like McDonald's focuses on speed, convenience, consistency, and their training.
Yeah.
And you see the outcome.
Yeah. We invested in, that's why we invested in the smart grade system on the deer, just to have that automatic, it's automatic grade control. And once they teach them to set it up, they can cut a pad in about an hour. So it's a really, the more technology is coming out, stuff like that, we're chasing that because it's cheaper to buy that system than it is to spend the time to train a new guy that's going to leave in 6 months.
Oh man. So I just did an interview with, are you familiar with the Dirt Ninja on YouTube?
Yeah.
So Tom, I've known Tom for years. So we did an interview. He was telling me that he probably has more invested in GPS technology than companies 3 to 5 times his size.
Oh yeah.
And it's just for that reason. Like, it's predictable, it's easy to train, and it takes the guesswork out of a lot of things. And it makes me as a 4-man, 5-man crew 5 times more efficient.
Oh, for septics, especially, like we have a system on our Kubota, and it's stupid simple. It maybe costs $10,000, but he's never ran an excavator before the last 3 months. And he's digging septic holes that have to be within literally a half inch of grade at the bottom of the hole. He's digging that right now. And I'm sitting here doing a podcast. So it's that technology is fantastic. And for the price, it can't be beat. So
especially when you start getting to the level of doing 15 a month, it pays for itself very quickly.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
If you're still doing 1 a month or a couple here and there, it's hard to justify that expense. But when as you scale.
Yeah, I don't really know what I would do without the GPS stuff anymore. It's getting to where if I get in a dozer or something that doesn't have grade assist or the autos on a dozer, I'm like, this is, give me the autos. I don't want to learn. I don't want to be a real operator, I guess. I just want.
Yeah. And, and it's a catch-22 because it is technology. So there are times that technology won't work right.
Yeah.
So you still have to have enough skill to do it manually.
Yeah.
But at the same point, let's not have so much pride that we reject the technology.
Oh yeah.
We think it's cheating. Like, you've got to mix the two together.
If it can be perfect, let's make it perfect. We don't know.
Yeah. What's more important, the result or your ability? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Because the customer wants the result.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, man. So what are you planning for the next 12, 16 months? Like, what's your vision now that you've got good line of sight on your finances? You've got good line of sight on what's coming up. Like, what's your goals?
Oh man, the goals, we're trying to trim the fat right now. We've definitely seen a little bit of a slowdown. I'm actually kind of excited for a slowdown at this point because we're so established and we're so efficient right now that I can handle it. So I'd kind of like some of these guys that are coming in underbidding me to fade out. But the biggest goals, man, trim debt, trim the BS. We have a lot of BS right now that we're trying to deal with. Just dumb expenses like that dozer, just trimming that. And then I'd like to hire at least 2 other guys to, get a foreman and get somebody else that can operate. And I want to step out of the field completely. I don't want to be, I just want to be managing everything, and that's the main goal. So we'll see if that happens or not. But
yeah. And do you have benchmark goals set for you to be able to achieve that?
Yeah. So we're hoping by July to hire our next guy. We've actually got him doing some training on the 28th of February. So I think it's definitely doable. I've been working for the last month of getting a binder full of training papers and just forms for every little task, like loading the trailer, tying down the machine. Every little task I'm trying to get organized. Because we want to double our workload this year. So that was the biggest thing this year, is trying to say no, because I got 15 septics, but I'm still getting calls.
Right.
So I need somebody else to start taking some of the load. So
yeah, and I think it's awesome that you're going through and you're doing those little how-tos and step-by-steps for everything in the business, because it serves 2 purposes, really. One, it makes your life easier and you're more efficient. The employees know what's expected of them, so there's none of that gray area, which frustrates them and makes them unhappy to be there. But more importantly, like, you might have a day where somebody wants to acquire your business, and the value of your business is exponentially higher because of all the systems and processes and the framework you've created for it. Because somebody can walk right in and start doing what you're doing tomorrow, and it doesn't take 6 months to transition and figure out where you're at and what you're doing. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. That's the goal. Get big enough to sell. I'd love to go back and start over and do it all again. That's the most fun of any of us building it.
Mason, it's addicting, isn't it?
We're not where we want to be, so I'm not done yet. But once we get there, I'd love to start over again.
But the whole starting a business, like, some people hate it and some people like deal with it and some people just love it. And you and I both love it. It's
awesome. Yeah, it's especially going from being under somebody's thumb to being able to make your own decisions, which I'm not everybody says be your own boss. I'm definitely not my own boss. I think I've got everybody that calls me as my boss now. So I didn't get away from that, but it is addictive.
It is. In fact, we have Skid Steer Nation so systematized with our team that we have and the outsourced companies that we use to help certain areas. We have so many processes written out and structures made for it that I mean, honestly, and I don't like saying this in a positive light because I got bored out of my mind, but like, if I'm content with where we are at financially, I could work 4, maybe 5 hours a week and keep the ship moving right where we're at. But then I get bored because I'm not built that way. Right. So, and so that's why we started the coaching program. Like, that's why I started it. Cause I'm like, this is so systematized. Instead of tripling that business and then, let's diversify. Teaching somebody how to grow a strong, solid business and be successful. It doesn't matter what the economy is. People need that.
Yeah.
Where with, wear items and attachments, like, you don't need to upgrade your grader next year. You could wait 5 years unless it breaks. But like, that's more recession, you're going to see dips with the economy in that. So to me, it was more important to diversify our product line than it was to double down on what we were currently doing.
Yeah, man, you guys are my favorite website to go to for attachments, because it's the most frustrating thing when I don't know the price. And you call John Deere and you're like, how much for a grapple? And they're like, let me call my dealer and I'll shoot you an email back. And you don't hear back for a week. And you're like, how much is you should know how much this costs. So I'm like, I get on there and I'm like, oh, $5,000. Okay. Yeah. So it is so frustrating, these dealers but yeah, you guys are awesome with that stuff. I mean, that Roadrunner thing, that was the smoothest process getting that thing.
Yeah. We try to make it as simple as possible. Again, remove the friction.
Yeah.
Like, you guys want to be able to see all the specs, how it works, enough photos, and the price. And not just the price, but like, what's the price delivered to me? That's why we do flat rate shipping. So I don't have to get a shipping quote and call you back. That's friction. Actually costs me money every year. I should switch because a lot of the time the quotes come in substantially higher than that was what this morning's problem was dealing with today was a reclassification of freight.
Yeah.
But we wanted to make it simple for you and give you all the information. And so it was like, it was a mental note to make sure that we focused the descriptions of the products in an educational light and not a sales light.
Yeah.
Because if you're already looking at skid steer attachments, you need something.
Oh yeah, man. It's which we went ahead and bought it, but that stupid smart grade system. There is no videos. There is no training. John Deere there is nothing about that attachment, but yet it costs $30,000. And it's like, how is there nothing that I can find online that says how this works? Like we bought a box attachment for it that's in the ad, but you can never find it on John Deere's website.
Wow.
So and I love John Deere, but gosh, if they're not selling a skid steer or a tractor, man, they don't care. So
well, yeah, and it's again, it's the economies of scale. Like they could care less about selling an attachment. They offer them to keep you a sticky customer for equipment, for large equipment. Right. That's like Cat. Like Cat doesn't care about the single owner of a single skid steer.
No.
I mean, if you think they do, you're crazy. Like, I mean, they want to sell those skid steers to the massive corporations and then the mining industries and all that. Like they offer them to everybody, but you are never in their meetings. Like, how do we make the life better of a single machine owner?
Yeah. We've taken a lot from one of my favorite salesmen, and he's with John Deere. That's why we have everything. But he answers all my phone calls. He's super, super chill about price. He'll just throw you out a ballpark. I mean, we've tried to take a lot of his stuff that he does for his sales that makes me like him and turn it over to Septics, man. And it works.
I was just going to say the same thing. Like, I think that's the best experience you can give anybody in this industry is like, pick your favorite person you work with for any company, figure out what he's doing and why you like it. And then how do you implement it in your business?
And we hear that all the time too. It's like, well, we called this other company for a septic system. They didn't give us a quote back. We called them. They never came out. They never gave us a quote. And we're like, we will have you a quote within 24 hours. So that's if not within a couple hours, we'll give you a ballpark figure. I'll send you an official quote within a couple hours. And man, that's got us so far.
And then you said you're using Jobber now for your estimates.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. The setup time on Jobber, I'm sure took a long time, but you can save all those descriptions for all the different systems and the phases of that, right?
Yeah, I actually have it where I can go in there and I type in their name, whatever. I go to an aerobic system. That's my base price. I type in what they add on, and then I have optional add-ons that are I go down through it and I select all the aerobic category. So then it just auto-populates. And then I select what they chose and give them the option of what they can add to the quote. I have my terms, my contracts on there for them to print and sign, and then I have what's really neat with it is I can add the cost. So on the system, I know how much a aerobic tank costs. I can actually put my cost and then it auto-populates my margin. So when we bid a job, we actually know the cost and everything that's going to be for each job. It's a really intuitive software.
Well, and I think it's intuitive, but let's not forget you took the time to thoroughly set it up.
Yeah, it's just a tool. I mean, it's how you use it for sure.
Yeah, and this goes back to this thing that I preach it. I probably every episode of this thing, right? Like, if I can spend 4 hours doing a task today that will save me an hour a week for as long as I own this business, where do you sign me up?
Oh yeah.
If you had to build every one of those estimates from scratch, how many hours a week would you be spending building estimates?
Oh, that's the thing is it takes me 10 minutes to do an estimate.
Right. But how long did it take you before Jobber?
I would sit down, and the hardest thing to do is to be like, okay, aerobic system. Okay, it's gonna be $7,000, but how do I break this down? And then how do I add, going through and being like, okay, it's gonna be a compacted whole, and then how do I reword that to make it, just doing all that it takes forever, and it's annoying. So getting rid of
but I
it
mean,
is
but on
great.
average, how long did an estimate take you before you switched software?
At least an hour
So an
per
hour.
estimate.
So you're
Yeah.
saving 50 minutes per estimate.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So 50 minutes per estimate. You're doing 15 of these this month.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a mathematician, but that's going to come out to probably 12 or 13 hours of free time that you've freed up because you took a little bit of time up front to build out the products in Jobber.
Yep.
Like that is the epitome of smart time management.
Yeah. And once you get all that, figured out and put in there, you can do it from your phone because now it's just plug and play. So I'm sitting there with the client. We just pull up the iPad. Here, look this, what do you want on here? And
yeah. So a lot of the guys we've been talking to lately, they've been using Joist, but it's the same thing. It's an app-based estimating software. You can add images, you can do all this, you can save products, descriptions.
Oh yeah. You can do it from an Excel. I mean, there's all it is just taking the time to get it somewhere.
But I think finding an outside company like Jobber or Joist is a smart decision.
Yeah.
Because it's flexible. It has an app. You're able to build it on the site. But you can't do that with an Excel. Like I can't build an Excel spreadsheet on my computer, let alone on my phone.
Yeah.
It's got the professional template, the professional layout that once you set it and you get your image in the way you like it, it's done. Like, I remember so many guys are like, well, I send QuickBook estimates. I'm like, you ever sent yourself one? And they're like, no. And I'm like, send one to you right now. And they do it. They go, oh my God, this is what it looks like. I'm like, like, this is why you're not winning work. Like it's not designed to be an estimating software.
Right. And it's nice because with we've kind of figured out if somebody's not willing to pay a deposit, they're probably not going to pay us. So being able to be like, we need 25% up front. And in the quote, once you accept it, it says pay the deposit. So it's right there and they can just pay with their card. It's done. It's over. They paid it, so now we don't have to worry about collecting a deposit or collecting checks. 90% of people pay through Jobber.
So do you do deposit up front and final payment at completion, or do you have a payment in the middle there based on progress of work also?
It depends on the job. With septics, we do 25% up front and then the rest at the end because they only take about a day to install. So, but if it's mulching, we do 50% up front. I don't really know. I don't have really justification for it, but mulching is kind of one of the things I can't. Septic, I can kind of take back some stuff where I can put a lien on a house. With mulching, it's if you don't pay me, I can't unmulch your trees. So,
and you're right. And I know again back to Dirt Ninja, like he has benchmark payments because he works with a lot of large companies. But like if we're digging out the site for a new building, once that's dug, that's phase one. You're paying me for phase one, and his estimates are built out with a total price, but each project phase is broke out individually so he can bill.
We don't do enough like long drawn out projects that are going to be, so if it's over 10 grand, we do. And we'll do like you said. But most of the time with builders, we'll have contracts that they send us. So, they have a contract for this, contract for that. So we don't start a new job until we finish contract one and so on. So that works pretty good. But
nice, man. Yeah. Nice. Well, Mason, this has been great conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed every bit of it. One last question to leave you with.
Yeah.
What would you tell Mason of 2019 with the knowledge you have today?
Oh man, I'd tell him a lot. Probably not stuff that I should say on here, but the biggest thing would be just when you get advice, when you watch YouTube videos on how to grow a business, when I talk to you, the biggest thing that I regret is not doing what somebody told me to do. When we did our coaching calls, you tell me exactly how to grow my business. And it took me 2 years to actually do every step that we talked about in that first week. So if I could go back, I'd be like, just listen to what people say. Don't try to be like, I can't do it right now. Just do it. Do what people say.
I think that's great advice. And I just want to add one little caveat on top of that. Make sure the people you're listening to have been where you want to go.
Yes. I've definitely seen that go wrong with a few, but
But if you
Yeah.
get a mentor or a business coach and somebody who like he's got tried and true experience in what you're trying to develop and grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be open, man. Be open because you don't know what you don't know, and this guy's trying to teach you.
Well, that or name. I remember when you were like, maybe we should add and septic, K&M and septic to the name. I was like, I don't know. And I remember I said, well, let me think about it. I immediately was like, why am I even arguing with this guy? So I called you back. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Put it on the website. Let's go. Because I'm just like, I'm not a business coach. Why am I trying to decide how this is going to go? Like,
and I think for a little backstory in that, like you and I had a very long conversation about where you're at today, the services you want to focus on, and where you want to be in 2 years from now. And every step of that conversation was septic systems. I'm getting this test. We're doing this. It's septic systems. I want to do a lot of septic systems. And then you're like, yeah, we're K&M Excavation. And I'm like, and septic? Like, why are we going to make a customer who sees you on Google or sees this or something assume that you do septics? Like, let's just tell them.
Yeah. That's, man, there's so many things I wish I could just go back and just have done months ago. It would have made my life so much easier. But
well, you're on the right track now. And the beautiful thing about where you're at, you've learned those lessons and they're not quickly forgotten. So phase 1 was a little bit longer than you wanted it to be, but because of the experience, the knowledge, your life work in it, phase 2 to phase 3 is going to happen a lot faster.
Oh yeah.
You won't make those same mistakes.
It's been awesome. Last couple of months have been, and that's what we've done the last couple of months is I've literally, I write it on everything. I'm like, just listen to what just do it. Like, stop. I get my own way because I think, why would I do it like that? But I just got to stop and just listen, just do it.
Yeah.
That was the technology on the skid steer, man. We listen to everybody we listen to that Dirt Talk podcast. And every guy is like, GPS changed my life. And then we're like, no, it probably won't. It's too much money. Then we did it. And we're like, yeah, that changed everything. So
changes it all. I mean,
you're
going to pay for that system in diesel fuel savings alone at some point, whether it's a year and a half, 2 years. Like, if the efficiency and speed that you get these projects done now means the machine's running less hours. Just your maintenance, oil, grease, and fuel will pay for that machine. At some point, it'll break itself even.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man.
Tough being a young guy trying to listen. That's a tough one.
It is. Well, man, thanks so much again for coming on the show today. You and I talk fairly regularly, and I always enjoy every one of our conversations. It puts a smile on my face whenever I see your progress, whether it's from our conversations or just seeing you on Facebook. If you guys want to keep up with Mason, it's KM Excavation and Septic.com, or just go to Facebook and look up KM Excavation and Septic. He's really getting good with his photos. He's starting to implement the drone, and he's somebody, if you're new beginning out, that you should be able to follow and learn a little bit about what he's doing and see why it works and how it works for him, and then implement it into your own business. So, Mason, thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, man. Have a good one.
All right, guys, you have just listened to another episode of the Skid Steer Nation podcast. And while we talked about finding mentors, finding someone who knows where you want to go and has been there, and taking their advice, it's a perfect time to remind you that Skid Steer Nation now offers a program called Groundbreaking Growth. Just go to www.groundbreakinggrowth.com and you can see what we do and what we offer. We help you build an actual business that is no longer just an expensive job. So if you're working for hourly rates, you have a job. If you want to grow a business and you're not sure how to get there, go to groundbreakinggrowth.com. Take a look around, schedule a call. You and I will have a conversation to see if we're a good fit and we can help you out and help you scale your business the same way Mason went from $3,000 a month to now doing over $60,000 a month in less than 2 years. So until the next episode.